And with all the movement in Congress regarding the upcoming hearings, which are taking place next week, in which there will be at least 3 new firsthand witnesses, it is claimed, into unidentified anomalous phenomena, as well as the efforts of the declassification task force in the U.S. Congress, and so many other smaller fights and pushes to gain increasing transparency into this issue, I thought no one better than Daniel Sheehan, who's been involved on this issue at a legal level as a lawyer and as a public advocate for so many years.
Jay Stratton, who was the head of the Advanced Weapons Special Access Program in the Pentagon, in effect, Lou Elizondo's boss, has now confirmed that he has been in the physical presence of a confirmed non-human origin extraterrestrial spacecraft, and he has actually seen with his own eyes the non-human beings that were occupants. So that's an extraordinary moment. There's some 40 witnesses who have come before the Senate Intelligence Committee on the Senate side and have under oath submitted themselves to sworn depositions detailing the existence of a program pursuant to which an element deep inside our Defense Department and deep inside our intelligence community, primarily in the operations director of the Central Intelligence Agency, their science and technology division, have been actively involved in bringing down UFOs, engaging them and physically forcing them to land and taking those craft into custody and attempting to reverse engineer the technology of those craft in order to build a new generation of weapon. Well, it's extraordinarily interesting. This thing of there's clearly overwhelming evidence from a court point of view, from a litigating attorney point of view. There is this dramatic body of evidence that at least a couple of these species are engaged in an active program of hybridizing, generating a hybrid species. That they're taking female egg cells, human egg cells and sperm cells, and they're mixing the genetic material from them with genetic material from their own bodies, and that they're generating a zygote or a fertilized egg cell, which they're implanting in the wombs of human women. There are dozens and dozens of people in different parts of the world that have been demonstrated to have no prior contact with each other, who are reporting this specific activity of the women being kidnapped and finding themselves pregnant after the abduction, even though they've not been with any other man, a human being, over the past 9 months or a year, and they find themselves to be pregnant. There's ample evidence that they've gone to gynecologists and had this confirmed. And then at the end of the third trimester, all of a sudden they have another abduction experience and they find themselves not to be pregnant.
Today, I am joined by Daniel Sheehan, a constitutional lawyer and public advocate at the forefront of the increasing fight for federal transparency regarding unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP, and a potential disclosure around the existence of non-human intelligence, NHI. It's a pleasure to have Danny on the show. He and I have had a chance to talk a number of times in recent years. And with all the movement in Congress regarding the upcoming hearings, which are taking place next week, in which there will be at least 3 new firsthand witnesses, it is claimed, into unidentified anomalous phenomena, as well as the efforts of the declassification task force in the U.S. Congress, and so many other smaller fights and pushes to gain increasing transparency into this issue, I thought no one better than Daniel Sheehan, who's been involved on this issue at a legal level as a lawyer and as a public advocate for so many years. So before I welcome Danny on the show, I'll read you a short bio. Carrying degrees from Harvard University Law School, Danny has helped lead multiple lawsuits of historic importance, including 3 Supreme Court cases, the Iran-Contra Lawsuit, the 3 Mile Island litigation, and the first sanctuary defense case. Prior to forming the Christic Institute in Washington, D.C., he litigated a number of high-profile cases, including establishing the right of news journalists to protect their sources, the Pentagon Papers case for the New York Times, the Watergate burglary case, and the Wounded Knee occupation case for the ACLU. He directed the New Paradigm Initiative at the State of the World Forum and has authored the book, The People's Advocate. Great to see you, Danny. How are you?
Terrific. Thanks, Reed.
Good. Well, thanks for carving out time in your busy week to come on Emergent and talk to us about all of the truly emergent new events within the ongoing struggle for transparency and disclosure on UAP. There's a lot to talk about. But before we dive in, just for those who are not aware of your work and your long journey with this issue, give them the short elevator 2-minute, and if that's possible, and also kind of what compels you to keep fighting, to keep going with all the obstacles at play.
Terrific. Well, I like many other people in our generation, was fascinated by the likelihood that there were planets orbiting the numerous stars that we could see at night as young people. It seemed obvious that there were other planets, but it wasn't until the scientific community had put up the Hubble telescope and started realizing more completely with the James Webb telescope that there are indeed planets orbiting virtually all of these major stars that we can see not only in our galaxy but in the numerous other galaxies around, and that once this realization settled in with the scientific community, where they started realizing that there were these planets, and there were at least 20% of these planets were hard rock planets like our Earth that were in the so-called Goldilocks zone of their respective stars, where life could actually be supported because it was close enough to the star to be warm enough for water to be liquid, but not so far away that the water would be frozen. So all of this era started dawning on everyone. And I was contacted and retained by Luis Elizondo, who was the head of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program inside the Pentagon. In that context, I've gotten to meet most of the major players around the world. I've gotten to interview literally hundreds of people about this issue. I've been in direct contact with people who are sincerely convinced that they've had direct face-to-face contact with occupants of these craft. And in that context, I have learned that our United States government is, in fact, in possession of one or more explicitly non-human origin extraterrestrial spacecraft and the bodies of the occupants, which they have now confirmed through biological testing of DNA, that are non-human. So this is
and Danny, if I can pause you for just a moment. So that insight, this extraterrestrial biological entity confirmed by biological testing, where is that coming from? Where have you found confirmation of that?
There are a number of, for example, Jay Stratton.
On behalf of the U.S. government, I worked as a senior intelligence official on the unidentified aerial phenomenon topic. I have seen with my own eyes non-human craft and non-human beings.
Jay Stratton, who was the head of the Advanced Weapons Special Access Program in the Pentagon, in effect, Lou Elizondo's boss, has now confirmed that he has been in the physical presence of a confirmed non-human origin extraterrestrial spacecraft, and he has actually seen with his own eyes the non-human beings that were occupants. So that's an extraordinary moment, and so we're pressing hard to try to get him to be one of the witnesses on September 9th in front of the House Oversight Committee's task force on disclosure. So that this is all going on right now at this very moment. And the United States Senate is in the process of repassing a 64-page bill, which is set up to direct the president to appoint a 9-person review board and to compel all 6 of our United States military services, all 18 of our intelligence agencies, all 32 of our United States Defense Department agencies who are assumed to be in possession of information pertaining to these UFO craft and to these bodies, these extraterrestrial beings, that this is underway right now. And the Senate is getting set to pass this ideally by the end of this week in Washington.
Yeah. So, and we're gonna get into the hearings, which are taking place September 9th, the newly submitted UAP Disclosure Act, and all those efforts of Congress. Before we dive deep into kind of the events on the front lines, I just thought it would be a great opportunity to step back with you and look at the phenomenon as a whole. You've been involved over so many decades, so many different facets of it. You've had, you've been privy to conversations that the rest of society has not. And you're even using words even here, extraterrestrial entities, bodies, biologics, that many would find to be a shocking assertion to be made. And I think, as you've said, as we see going forward, we will see more of those assertions. But just from where you stand after all these years, how do you view the phenomenon? What is it that we're contending with at this point?
Well, I believe that, like many other investigations that I've conducted over the last 50 years, there are more than one thing going on at the same time. And a lot of people get confused because they're trying to pull out one string of the narrative. But the primary reality that we're dealing with here is that there does, in fact, exist extraterrestrial, highly intelligent, highly technologically developed, but distinctly and categorically non-human beings inside our own Milky Way galaxy. And that a number of these, somewhere around at least 5 or so, have in fact, over the billions of years that they have been around longer than we have been, that they have actually developed a capacity to move from their star system, literally billions of light years away, to come to our planet. And that they are coming to our planet. We've gotten
was that millions or billions of light years?
Well, there's some of them from billions of light years away.
Yeah.
And so whatever this technology is, by means of which they can transport these craft along with their occupants from their star system to ours, is not within any of the kind of theories of physics that our human family has at least publicly discovered up to this point. And so that becomes a critical element here. And what I've become convinced that not only that they exist, but they in fact have been coming to our planet. And that the UFO phenomenon, as is commonly understood by regular people, is in fact some type of a vehicle, a means by which they come. Physically, biologically, they come to our planet, and they've been gathering flora and fauna and different genetic materials from our planet for some time. There appears to have been at least a substantial upsurge in the appearance of these vehicles since the detonation of the initial nuclear bombs, the atomic bombs in 1945. The first one was detonated in July of 1945, and then immediately following that, in August, the actual public bombings in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And there has been an uptick in the sightings of these craft. And then there began in the early 50s to be an intense number of communications coming in about individual human beings having had encounters with the craft actually up close. Landing in fields in other areas, and
you're talking about the testimony of direct physical encounters.
That's right, direct
that have taken place.
Encounters, close encounters of the third kind, where they actually have direct encounters with the beings, and they attest to having been taken aboard the craft, have direct telepathic communications with the people, and these things are still at this point quite beyond what it is that the Congress has decided to come to grips with. The Congress is in the process of trying to come to grips with the reality of the craft and with the reality of the actual extraterrestrial beings, kind of organic beings coming and going from our planet. That's where they are right now. And that's what the nature of the hearing on September 9th is going to be about, that we're going to be talking about. There are previous hearings already, but very importantly, there's some 40 witnesses who have come before the Senate Intelligence Committee on the Senate side and have under oath submitted themselves to sworn depositions detailing the existence of a program pursuant to which an element deep inside our Defense Department and deep inside our intelligence community, primarily in the operations directorate of the Central Intelligence Agency, their science and technology division, have been actively involved in bringing down UFOs, engaging them, and physically forcing them to land and taking those craft into custody and attempting to reverse engineer the technology of those craft in order to build a new generation of weapon to try to establish our dominion over other nation states and on our planet.
So let me pause us here, and just for the viewers, this is a tremendous amount to take in, drinking from the water hose, as they say.
Yes.
But so what you're saying is that we are being engaged by a set of physical, biological, extraterrestrial entities. So not of Earth origin.
That's right.
And you mentioned the number 5. I've heard similar numbers,
Yes.
under 10. Of distinct entities or multiracial groups of entities who are physically present. Now, these are beings with evolved biological structures, right? Or are these interdimensional in some fashion? What's your sense on the origin?
It appears that because of the means by which they transport from their star system, billions of miles away, to here, because of the way that they do that, they give the appearance of potentially coming out of some other dimension, because they sort of materialize right in front of people. The craft, the entire craft, just materialize, and so that gives people the impression within their perspective, say, "Oh, this must be coming from some other dimension," because people are familiar now with the facts that there's indications, that scientific indications, that there are vibrational dimensions to which we, without some kind of special technology, don't have any direct sensorial access. And so that people have hypothesized that perhaps there is a sentient civilization of some sort that exists in another frequency, another dimension around us. My own personal present opinion is, based on everything that I've encountered over the last 50 years in this field, is that is a function of the method by which they move, by means of which they come from their distant star system to here, and then they kind of materialize or appear to materialize here in our three-dimensional world. So that's my sense, is that they're extraterrestrial, just giving the appearance of being extra-dimensional.
Lou Elizondo has talked about this warping of the space-time, the generation of this bubble in which the laws of normal movement through space-time may not equally apply as they do, to us. And that may create bizarre visual effects, electromagnetic effects, might actually cause certain injuries to close observers, which is a topic, UAP injury that's coming out increasingly. So this is fascinating. And I know there's a big discussion and debate about origin, about the nature of this purported entity. Are they ethereal, non-corporeal, or are they physical, flesh and body like we are?
Right.
And how might we interpret their purpose for coming to the Earth, their intentions for engaging humanity? How do you think the average viewer or member of society who's coming into this space, learning about this phenomenon, should be thinking about this potential existence of non-human entities in our world?
Well, I think that what people have to be thinking of is, what is the latest information that's getting set to be made available by different government entities about a subject in which a clear majority of people in our country and in Western civilization and in the third world countries and in the first world, the highly technologically developed countries, already believe basically to be true. Most people who are adequately well informed believe that, in light of the more recent discoveries on the cosmological level, the existence of these planets and how Earth-like some of them are, how capable they appear to be to sustain life, that most people suspect that it's true. That what's the surprising part is to discover that they're actually coming here now, so that they're putting together two different categories of stories. One is the kind of cosmological understanding of what the state of the universe is. The other one is all of these stories that they've heard since the 1950s about UFOs actually being here and actually having occupants that are non-human, and they encounter us. So these two worlds are coming together now, and government is feeling compelled obviously, to come forward and disclose something, at least, about what they know about this.
And why do you think that is? What is compelling government to do that?
It's interesting that it appears that there is myriad reports of people who profess to have had direct encounters with the beings, the occupants of the craft. That the occupants of the craft are extremely concerned about our acquisition of thermonuclear weapons, this technology that we've had since 1945. They're terribly concerned that the people that are in position of governing in the nation states, where our present state of civilization has evolved, that are in are in repeated dialectical confrontations where they're threatening each other with the use of a nuclear weapon. And that the beings are extremely concerned that if, in fact, there were to occur a worldwide global thermonuclear war, that it would not only eliminate our entire species and most of the species on the planet, but that it could terminate the life-generating capacity of our planet. Our planet seems to be one of, at least comparatively few, planets that actually gestate life. And therefore, if there were an all-out thermonuclear war with the massive radiation and the mutations that would be generated by that, then it would destroy the Earth as a source of genetic material. And that seems to be a potential major concern that they have. And as we come to a point where we have less and less responsible people in charge of governments around the world, and the proliferation of nuclear weapons, the potential of an accidental nuclear war breaking out and destroying our world has caused the extraterrestrial beings to be on high alert.
So let's dive into that. I'm excited you want to talk scenarios of intent, because not many people do. It seems to be a taboo topic and one to be avoided, which I find surprising and strange to not levy equal scrutiny on ourselves and the NHI and not engage in a selective blindness, which the UFO community often seems to do. So there's them and there's us. There's what we humans are doing behind secret doors and to each other, and then there's what NHI are doing here.
That's right.
Given that they're operating in a state of secrecy and non-disclosure heretofore, their activities need to be inspected and potentially even interrogated. And so, obviously the nuclear trigger is an obvious and well-known corollary to UAP activity.
That's right.
Nuclear weapons depots, launch facilities, research facilities are all kind of locales of fixation, it seems, for UAP activity.
That is right.
Now, what about the other aspects of the phenomenon? So, for example, these NHI-initiated physical encounters, abductions, as people report them. How should we interpret that at the intent level?
Well, it's extraordinarily interesting. This thing of there's clearly overwhelming evidence from a court point of view, from a litigating attorney's point of view. There is this dramatic body of evidence that at least a couple of these species are engaged in an active program of hybridizing, generating a hybrid species. That they're taking female egg cells, human egg cells, and sperm cells, and they're mixing the genetic material from them with genetic material from their own bodies, and that they're generating a zygote or a fertilized egg cell, which they're implanting in the wombs of human women. And after a period of gestation, usually about the first trimester, these women are abducted again, and the growing zygote is removed and taken away and apparently brought to term, so that there is this program going on of creating some type of a hybrid species of a combined human and the tall whites, they call them. They're the classic UFO being with a large head and the dark eyes. They're the almond-shaped eyes, and that there is very clearly overwhelming evidence that there is such a program going on right now. And the question as to why they're doing that is problematic. That would start wandering into the realm of speculation. I don't think it's speculation to determine that they're doing it. I think that's pretty well established.
And just to pause on that, because some folks are not caught up on what that evidence is, what is the evidence in your mind that would convince an astute observer that that is taking place?
Well, there are dozens and dozens of people in different parts of the world that have been demonstrated to have no prior contact with each other, who are reporting this specific activity of the women being kidnapped and finding themselves pregnant after the abduction, even though they've not been with any other man, a human being, over the past 9 months or a year. And they find themselves to be pregnant. There's ample evidence that they've gone to gynecologists and had this confirmed. And then at the end of the third trimester, all of a sudden they have another abduction experience and they find themselves not to be pregnant. So that this story has been repeated over and over again, literally dozens and dozens of times by highly credible and completely emotionally appropriate renditions of the stories. That Dr. John Mack was involved in a lot of this, and other professionals have verified this. So it has convinced us at the New Paradigm Institute that this is in fact taking place. As to why it's happening, that does tend to kind of move into the area of speculation. We're investigating that now at the New Paradigm Institute to try to ascertain why that would be going on. What exactly is the extension of that program? People have speculated wildly about it, and in my opinion, somewhat irresponsibly about it. And so we refrain from doing that, but we are convinced that it is happening.
Well, you're in the right place, because Emergent, this show, Forerunner, the community site attached to it, is all about responsible speculation on the frontiers of what we know and don't know, because there's so much we don't know. So I appreciate this conversation. I want to ask briefly, before we kind of plunge into that territory, what is known within the halls of government on that topic? We heard at the last congressional hearing, I believe, earlier this year, Congresswoman Boebert made a shocking statement. I don't know if it was a hot mic moment or if she meant to make the statement that there is discussion on the Hill about hybrid individuals, of them walking among us, might have been her words. Someone can fact check me on that. So where is the government at with this? When I say government, it's not a monolith, right? So are we talking about the IC, the intelligence community, the defense establishment? Are we talking about the elected side? But to your knowledge, where do those who are holding the levers of power regarding transparency, disclosure, and federal action, if human beings, if American citizens are being non-consensually engaged or taken from their homes, subjected to these undisclosed medical procedures, that constitutes what might be considered a crime against humanity, if not a statutory crime in many jurisdictions and in many senses. So where do the responsible parties sit with this, to your knowledge?
Well, of course, this raises the question, Reed, about what the actual topography is of inside the government. For example, that we're dealing right now with Congress. In Congress, that there are layers of knowledge inside Congress. There are the intelligence committees, which are a comparatively recent phenomenon that have been generated since the Church Committee hearings back in the mid-1970s, because of the abuse of our intelligence communities that have been so well established. So these intelligence committees were set up inside the House and Senate to oversee and to try to constrain the covert operations of the intelligence community in our executive branch. That is a very imperfect process, I might point out right now. That it's clear to me as a scholar of this particular area, dating all the way back to my undergraduate years at Harvard College, studying foreign policy under Henry Kissinger in Gov 182, that you come to realize that there are these layers inside our government where the amount of information that is really shared gets thinner and thinner as you go out. And so that the House and Senate Intelligence Committees know more about what this information is than the general members of the Congress do, either in the House or Senate. Then there is a group called the Gang of Eight in the Congress, which has to do with the majority and minority leaders in both the two major political parties in the House and the Senate. and they are briefed up on more information than even most of the members of the intelligence committees have. Okay,
On this issue, do you know if the Gang of Eight is up to speed on what the government?
not full speed, no, because there are echelons of authority way beyond the Gang of Eight. There
I'm
there
sure.
are there are security clearances, probably 12 different security clearance levels above top secret, and that as you ascend into these levels of intelligence, you get a smaller and smaller group of people that know about these things, and there could be a group as small as a dozen to 20 people at any given time are fully briefed in about what's going on. So I think that the most meaningful conversation would be, what do we think they know? As distinct from, what, as we move out in the concentric circle of less and less information that people have, what do they know? But
Right.
my sense is that the people that are at the very core of this not only know that, in fact, that these extraterrestrial beings are coming and going from here, they know that it's been going on for some time. There's almost certainly been some reasonable effort made to establish some form of communication with these extraterrestrial beings, to at least set up some sort of informal protocols with regard to how they're going to relate to each other. They're clearly not engaged in open warfare against each other, or else we tend to know that. But there's some type of an agreement that's been reached as to how they're going to respect each other's space here. Secondly,
Between different NHI
that's
agreement.
right. That's right.
Okay, because I know you gave out the number 5, and let's just imagine for a moment there was a half dozen
Yes.
such entities present operating. Should we anticipate that they're in full collaboration, copacetic, totally aligned with each other?
Extraordinarily
Should we
important
anticipate that they're in overt competition or conflict, or moderate, mild competition, or at times collaboration?
Yep.
How might we anticipate this complex arena in our
I,
skies?
the answer to that would be yes. All of that.
We should anticipate a complex arena.
The reality is that it's if we project our own experience as a human species, it's highly likely that if you have a half a dozen different juridical entities from different star systems coming to our planet, that they would have to have figured out some sort of method of communicating with each other to coordinate their activities, so they're not revealing each other, for example, or stepping on each other's toes. And so that there's almost certainly some sort of, whether it's some sort of a juridical entity that has sort of kind of a combined authority, any kind of collective authority over each of the half a dozen or so different species, is not at all clear. But the likelihood is that there's some sort of shadow of some kind of gossamer set of protocols that are functioning among the 6 of them, to have some sort of common understanding of what each of them is doing. And if, in fact, any one of them were to get way too out of line, that there might be some sort of collective steps taken by the people, the entities, to rein them in, even informally. Just like as if you're on a football team, and you know that one of your players is cheating, and you'll pull them aside and try to talk to them to get them to stop doing it. You won't go to the referees and blow the whistle on them, but you'll get them to stop. So there's something probably like that going on among the
to regulate. Yeah, I mean, part of me thinks that, if there are abductions taking place, if there is one or more NHI initiating physical contact, undertaking these medical experiments, or forced impregnation, or genetic or reproductive procedures, then how would the other, 5 or so entities care to think about that?
That's right.
If they really didn't like that happening to us, they might do something about it, and that's where we might see more conflict, more some force stopping.
That's right.
This kind of contact. I'm not sure we see that. There are some historical analogs, at play, but not many to go back to suggest that that there's a conflict in our skies over us, and so
So there seems to be some degree of acquiescence, at least, on the part of all of the half a dozen or so that are here, that the degree to which that is going on with regard to, and it appears to be the tall whites, they call them, in the little 3.5 feet people, that those seem to be the ones engaged in this kind of active measures with regard to the hybrid program. But we have at least numbers of witnesses who have testified that they have found themselves in the presence of more than one of these species at a given time. They actually find themselves abducted. They find themselves in some sort of a facility where they actually encounter a very important group. One of these half dozen or so is what they call the mantis people. These like 7 feet tall, extremely thin, kind of hunched over beings that they look like praying mantises. People think of them, and some people call them insectoids. It's kind of a derogative kind of them, but they're the mantis people, they call them, and they always appear to sort of be in charge. Whenever they find them in the presence of one or more of the other species, they seem to be the ones giving directions and being in charge. And so that, but we don't know yet. But to get back to the very point, this entity of, say, a dozen or 20 people that are at the very core of our intelligence and military intelligence community, that they probably have a pretty good idea about what the protocols are that are operative inside these half a dozen different species. And very importantly, they're the ones that are aware of whatever the protocols are, formal or informal, that have been developed between that group and the entities, the ET entities. That is virtually certain. And that there is either, given the fact that our people are unable to stop them from doing the reproduction, the biological hybrid program, there appears to be at least some form of acquiescence. Now, my sense is it's more forced than it is actually consensual, because there's not much they can do about it.
That they're being quietly forced or overtly forced to consent to this kind of access to the population.
That's right. At least acquiesce to it. Now, on the other hand, there is this extremely troublesome element here going on, is that I think somewhere outside of that core of a dozen or 20 people that are at the very center of knowledge about all this, there are others. There's a slightly larger concentric circle around them who seem to be bent upon capturing these UFOs, that they're engaged in an active program of trying to solicit their approach and capture them to try to get at their technology. So those are kind of hostile actions that are being taken. And I think that our group of 20, let's say, refer to them, the internal core of our intelligence and military people, are having to try to constantly explain away that effort and trying to reduce that effort as much as they might. But we don't know. But this image, I think that people that are listening should try to understand. There are these concentric circles of authority and of knowledge. The degree of knowledge is commensurate with whatever degree of authority they have, but the real authority resides in this group of a dozen to 20 people that really know what's going on at any given time, and their decisions kind of radiate out from there, and that they have some substantial effect even into the outer circles, so that the members of Congress, to be clear about this, know better than to really insist upon finding out. They've gotten the message that they're not supposed to be doing this.
Yeah, and there have been congressmen and congresswomen that have talked about being intimidated.
That's right.
And in very overt, very alarming fashions, not to mention so many whistleblowers the same. I mean, I think if we're going with concentric circles, I think it does beg the question at this point, given all factors, is the circle at the center a human one or a non-human one? Who's driving the secrecy?
Yeah, I think it's a human one.
Is it a Venn diagram? Is it overlapping circles of secrecy where there is a non-human intent to operate in secrecy? Obviously, there's a human one.
Yes.
Now, is there a convenient air gap between them that's always maintained, non-breachable? or are these circles starting to overlap? Are whatever the NHI's intent, is it overlapping and entangling itself with the intentions of the national security apparatus of not just this country, but of its prime competitors and even smaller competitors globally?
Well, this raises a profoundly important question, and that is the ability that the ET people have developed in the billions of years that they may have been in existence, older than us, of what capacity they have developed to actually penetrate into the consciousness of individual human beings and to basically implant directives to them. And this is something, a very real thing that you and I know. And to the extent to which they're capable of doing that, they could, in fact, have penetrated the very inner core of the decision makers in our human family, so that there's dozen to 20 people actually think that they're making all kinds of really illuminated decisions, but they're not.
I mean, as I look out on the world today, geopolitically, in terms of technology, culture, I'm seeing some majorly non-human looking actions being proposed. I'm looking at countries sending over 100,000 of their own citizens to imminent death on a battlefield for a small swath of land that has minimal value economically, in the sense of Russia right now. There are some moves that are being made to escalate conflicts that do not benefit any party. There's no calculus in which this is a good move for one's nation or the global community or any human actor. So it just begs, I think the responsible line of speculation is this: NHI is present. There are multiple NHI in all likelihood. I think we can decompose the NHI word of non-human intelligences, which could mean just about anything that's non-human, down to this increasingly verified reality that there are physical, non-human, biological entities present on Earth, operating technologies of non-human origin. So if there are multiple of those, and they are in some degree of collaboration or competition, we don't fully know, that is a red light on the dashboard for whoever's driving the world. If there's a driver on the bus, they need to be aware that there is a potential actor with hostile intent engaging against or in ignorance of or in violation of our laws, our norms, our values as a species, and in ways that are potentially highly alarming. And so we bring this up, I do, on this show, because I know everyone's got their eyeballs on the September hearings, declassification. We want the UAP files. We want to bang on the door of the Pentagon, get the secrets, but just know that there are multiple secrecy apparatuses at play.
That's right.
And there may be a non-human one. And to your point, Danny, if there's a neurological or psionic line of direct influence or even control that is possible, that is extra alarming, because then the human moves we're making may not be human in origin. The technologies like AI that we are deploying with almost no control mechanisms, we may be doing so at key moments, certain key people at key moments, in ways in which they are unhinged from their human interest and are operating on behalf of a non-human interest that we haven't accounted.
That is possible. That is possible. And of course, once you start generating even a 1% possibility of that being true, the people on our side who follow the 1% theory, is that they start taking defensive moves toward the ETs, predicated upon that set of assumptions. Now, but on the other hand, do not ever underestimate the potential perfidious nature of some of the decision making on the part of, like, for example, the Soviet Union or Russia now, in spending tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of lives, fighting over territory that, other than Crimea. I mean, obviously Crimea is of extraordinary value because it's the only warm water port that Russia has for its submarines and its fleet. That's different. But, fighting over some of the other areas, even though it's irrational, never underestimate the power of the human beings to be irrational on their own. And so that we have to be careful of projecting blame out onto an extraterrestrial species that we're perfectly capable of performing ourselves. So that it's not dispositive, that type of evidence of the non-rational kind of decisions that we're making. But given the knowledge that we have about the technology, it's perfectly clear that at least as of 1977, our own people had come to realize that the ETs have a technology which we've commandeered that are capable of projecting subliminal telepathic communication to large groups of people. We know that from the experiments that were engaged in the remote viewing program with Pat Price. You know, they brought Pat Price. This is our people in the Stanford Research Institute brought Pat Price to a facility in South Central Canada and placed them into this facility, this little domed facility with communication dishes on the top of it, and put this helmet on him in the facility, and had him project, and then they broadcast with these communication dishes down onto the northern peninsula of Michigan his telepathic message of, you are to file your next year's federal income tax forms in this little nowhere town down in West Virginia in this little specific post office box. And upwards of 80% of the people in the peninsula did that. Okay. And this was done by our people back in 1970, because I saw it in 1977. I was shown the files showing that they were doing that. And that was coming from their commandeering of ET technology that they had recovered from the craft, so that we know that not only our people have access to that technology, but clearly the ET people have access to that technology. And this is one of the preeminent threats that we really need to deal with here. And it makes it almost impossible to figure out what to do about it. You can't confirm the bona fides of the decision making, even on the part of our most good faith governing officials. You just can't tell it. And this is what I think many people are afraid of. The Carl Nells and the Lou Elizondos and the Chris Mellons, who constantly talk about the threat of catastrophic disclosure. If you were to reveal this level of technology, and not only in the hands of the ET people, but in our hands, and realize that that's the level at which things are going on right now, the vast majority of people would lose hope. They would lose their mooring. They wouldn't know how to trust anybody. And it isn't the crass decision, the people that are in positions of power are going to keep that secret because they don't want to lose their positions of authority. That's just kind of sophomoric levels of analysis.
I would agree. Humans wanting power is insufficient to explain the level and the scale and the depth of this secret. And yet we talked about in the beginning, you mentioned, government is compelled now to bring this out. And again, what is that compelling force? Because the reasons to not disclose, if you are one of these secret keepers, I can imagine, are overwhelming in their potency. So why do it? What is forcing this? And it's been talked about that there is some kind of impending event, or that there will be an open contact attempted, some kind of catastrophic NHI disclosure. Do you have a sense of what is the compelling force?
My sense of it is that the ET people and whatever kind of collective decision-making authority they have among each other are extremely concerned, more so than ever, that our human species is on the brink of potentially destroying but
why would that compel our government to act in the way that it is?
That's between the Soviet Union and China and the United States, primarily. The dynamics that they're engaged in right now have so increased the possibility of a potential global thermonuclear war, and therefore the devastating of the life-generating capacity of our planet, and therefore eliminating the ability of the star people to have any kind of access to genetic material to help seed life elsewhere in the universe, that they're on the brink of potentially intervening. And if they intervene and they, on a massive scale, demonstrate their ability to shut down all the nuclear facilities and to completely immobilize the nuclear aircraft carrier groups and submarines, and that type of intervention on their part would be revelatory of their existence. And the reality is that no effective steps have been really taken to figure out how to adjust our economic system, our geopolitical system, our domestic political system. They're not taking steps to figure out how to accommodate the existence of this civilization, because they're still in the mode of denying that it's true. They've gotten themselves
so to summarize, there may be some attempt by an extraterrestrial intelligence or multiple to come in overt form and disable our nuclear weapons
That's right.
capabilities, so that we can no longer threaten ourselves and each other, which seems like a peaceable act, except when you think about the act itself of mass revealing their existence and assuming they want to actually enact that control. They have to take the levers of control. They can't just disable it one day. They have to keep it disabled, which means they have to affect
that's the challenge.
the policymakers who make the policies to disable it, and they have to disband the military organizations that keep it on and keep it ready to launch every day. So that act of taking control, is that potentially a factor at play?
Yes, that's a factor. And the problem is, even if one assumes the highest levels of good faith that one could, responsibly assume on the part of the ET people, the fact of the matter is it's a question of the degree of importance that they attach to maintaining access to the genetic materials on our planet. If that is the preeminent matter of importance, in no matter what good faith they have in wanting to preserve our own agency and allow us to make our own mistakes and everything else, even if you assume that, there comes a point that if in fact the value of maintaining continued access to the genetic material on our planet exceeds their desire to allow us to stay free, to make our own silly mistakes, that presents a real threat. That's a real risk that we have now. The problem is that the state of development of our national security state and the levels of irresponsible types of decisions that our national security states are making. Now, I'm not talking about just the United States, but I'm talking about Russia, and I'm talking about growingly China. That the institution of the nation state itself is so dysfunctional. And when you take into account the development of the technologies, not only of thermonuclear technology, but these psionic technologies now, when you put that into their hands, that you're starting to present a situation where the need for any good faith extraterrestrial community to try to preserve the genetic material of our planet puts them at a higher and higher state of motivation to potentially intervene.
Right. And it may be to protect it, not for our interests. It may be to protect it for larger exopolitical interests, single actor interests.
Yeah. But not only that, but interests that the best of us might even think are benign. If for example, hypothetically, they're actually harvesting genetic material here and seeding other planets that have the capacity to sustain life, but not yet the capacity to generate life, that may be seen as a beneficial thing from a galactic perspective, in that we're operating at such a limited perspective, ethically and everything else, that we aren't even computing that in. And that's the challenge that we have here, that all of this reduces itself to an extraordinarily dramatic challenge to our human family to try to ascend to a much more sophisticated level of moral analysis and perspective, and to try to overcome the limitations of basically medieval political structures that we have on our planet.
Right.
The state, was originated in 1527 or something, at the Treaty of Westphalia by the royal families of Europe. To say, oh, here, let's evolve to a state of having these nation states that are all in competition with each other, but understand each other and recognize the sanctity of each other's territories, and et cetera. But still, that's an extremely potentially primitive level of political science. It's not a very beneficial system. It carries with it the threat of thermonuclear war, the total destruction of our entire species, the termination of the life-generating capacity of our planet, and yet we're still stuck with it. And so
I think it's not just only that we're in the Stone Age and they're in the Space Age, and therefore we must ascend to their level. I mean, it's possible that there is a model for human sovereignty that enables humanity to be a sovereign species on a planet of origin and maintain territorial control for its own perpetuation, for its own accomplishments, without just absorbing ourselves into an exopolitical framework which may not share any of our values. We have to suss this out ethically. Are we willing to embrace a non-human reality and abandon our own in almost a complete absence of evidence regarding the intentions of them and what they're doing and why they're here? I would say not a wise move at this moment. Rather, we need to get our own human-centric value system articulated, a framework for international governance of the presence of NHI laid down, and get out of this. And here we're gonna dive into the tunnel. We're gonna go corkscrew down into the reality of congressional hearings and whistleblowers and the UAP Disclosure Act, the federal government. But that's a silo, right? That's the U.S. government defense-centric silo of this phenomenon. Stepping out of that, there is a human event taking place, fundamentally human. And I think there's so much to value about humanity. And I know a lot of people deride humanity in the presence of non-humans, and they might assume, well, if they can travel the stars, they've eclipsed war, and they must be ethically advanced, they must be spiritually advanced. Total logical fallacy. Not necessarily. There are about 1,000 other things that might be possible. So we have to suss through those. But I appreciate this conversation and you just sharing your thoughts. And I know you're speaking from a lot of information that's not public. It's not out there on Reddit and X, and
That's right.
that people can't yet go look at. So I appreciate that. And not many people are willing to speak from a body of information that has to be kept confidential, at least hopefully not forever, but for the moment perhaps. So let's turn now, Danny, and talk about the here and the now and the what next, the step ahead. Next week, there's a set of hearings in Congress. What can we expect from those? And how might this reveal some new information regarding either the body biological side, possibly the geopolitical side,
So
the
just
activity of other
do it, love. I apologize.
of other countries involved?
No, they're delivering a mattress to our house.
Very important.
I didn't want to
Much more important than this conversation.
No,
You gotta sleep.
but this is more important. Look at the reality is that I've been dealing. I've been dealing with these issues in Washington, now for 50 years, and that any rational person learns not to have over expectations about the effectiveness of Congress functioning, so long as the national security state is basically in charge. Okay, and there's no doubt about in this particular area, the national security state is very much in charge of how much is going to be released, why they want to release it, their own evaluation as to what the potential.
Even in hearings like next week's, they would have some influence over who gets selected to speak, what they would be allowed to speak. Do you mean
They'll
that?
have total control because the Congress has not yet been willing to exercise any of its constitutional authority to subpoena anybody. They're all completely going along with whatever the national security state people are willing to do. More importantly, what they are actively deciding they want to do. The Congress is just in a completely responsive mood. They're not taking any real initiative in this. They're pretending to. Oh, look, the Congress has been made bold to pass this and that. I mean, the people that drafted the 64-page bill are out of the national security community. I mean, the staff.
Under its influence, or in the sense that they were members of it at one point? In what sense?
Yes. And that they, it's like the CIA people, once a CIA person, always a CIA person. When a person has gone over into being an active participant in the national security state with all the security clearances still presently operational, know what they're doing, and they have made a decision that they're to move forward and to decide what type of a new setup is going to be put together to deal with the extraterrestrial presence, and it entails this panel, this 9-person panel, leaving complete control ultimately in the hands of the president as to how much he is willing to reveal at any given time, because they leave in the statute this opening that he can just at any time postpone the revelation of any particular piece of information. And the House has gone even so far as to leave in the hands of the heads of the different agencies how much they're willing to even make available. They've left it in their hands under the House wording, to exercise their own discretion and postpone the revelation of this, and then put it into the hands of this panel. And the panel is to be appointed entirely by the president.
So I know you've been a strong advocate for the UAPDA, at
Yes.
least at its initial draft, and to my knowledge, the initial draft carries over to the present one.
Yes.
Majority. So what's changed then in your? Because I sense a little bit more of a suspicion as to either the authenticity of it as a document or its end results. What it will deliver in terms of disclosure.
Yeah, I would say this is my experience is that the fact that the drafters of the 64-page bill in the Senate, which is the gold standard as of right now, that places in the hands of the president the complete discretion as to who he is going to appoint to those positions, or in fact, even if he's going to appoint anybody, because they aren't ordering him to do it. They're taking the position that, oh, here Congress is, setting up a bill asking the president to appoint this panel. I mean, the president.
But that hasn't changed from, this was submitted during the Biden administration,
That's right.
the latter days of it.
That is right.
It hasn't changed till now. It's a different president.
Same.
Okay.
Same authority, and so they're saying it's up to the president. So they could nominate anybody they want. They could nominate the Pope, and 9 saints, to try to do the job that everybody would hope that somebody might do. But the president doesn't have to pay any attention to that at all under the president's statute, because they think that's the best they can get away with right now. But the reality is that may be the best that they even want right now. So you don't know.
So is the UAPDA a trustworthy, good faith effort then to cause a disclosure or at least increase transparency, or are there reasons for concern in your opinion regarding supporting it?
Well, no. I think that the reality is that the community that wants to have more disclosure is compelled to deal with this particular offering that is being proffered. But it's understood, it needs to be understood, it's not being proffered by the Congress. It's being proffered by the national security state people. Okay, and Congress has gone along with it and is supportive of it to some extent. But there's another element inside the national security community over on the House side that is trying to limit it from even what the Senate side is willing to do. So that dynamic is so the real player here is on the House side is how much of the 64-page bill that has been drafted by the Senate, passed by the Senate in 2023, and is likely to be passed again right this week. That 64-page bill is coming back in again. It lays out the entire contours of what it is they're proposing, which is not that great, but it's better than anything we've ever had yet, and it's better than almost anything we're going to get the intelligence community to agree to do, and it is certainly better than anything we're going to have the Congress have the courage to do, because they're threatened by the national security state. People aren't coming to grips with the basic problem that we've got here, is that we're in a national security state that is actually willing to threaten members of Congress. I mean, not just threaten their political career, threaten their lives, if they get out of line here. And so that's what we're dealing with right now. And it's a level of consciousness on the part of our collective political community, which is really quite low. And it is what, in part, represents the threat of potential, silly and ridiculous, catastrophic decision making on the international level with regard to nuclear weapons. And that's what's causing the anxiety potentially on the part of the extraterrestrial beings. It's like, look at the state of development you guys are in. You've allowed this ascendancy of these national security state people. I mean, we've got a guy in the presidency right now that is absolutely completely unpredictable. I mean, he doesn't comply with any type of norms of morals or ethics or reliability. And he's in charge of making decisions about sending a nuclear powered aircraft carrier group into the vicinity of Russia as part of his negotiating tactics, with Russia. I mean, that's extraordinarily dangerous activity. Okay. So what I'm saying is that our people have to come to grips with the offering that's been made by the National Security State Infrastructure now in the 64-page bill.
That's a fascinating framing of what the UAPDA. I've never heard that. I think viewers will be either alarmed or definitely super disappointed to know that even the UAPDA is an expression of a strictly maintained and parameterized space in which increasing societal disclosure is allowed to take place by the very entities that have kept it secret all along.
That is right.
Now, that may be shocking, that characterization to some, probably not surprising, right, everyone, that, these movements are not happening with full freedom or fully independent of the ties and tethers.
Right.
So not wholly surprising. But, if there is such a control mechanism in place, even around the elected side of government calling someone to testify, or, and I would love to get your take on this, being able to call a hostile witness, to subpoena someone to testify against their will. Now, I can't imagine the national security state would much like that. Do you see that as a possible line of attack for Congress to take?
I have no historical experience with that degree of courage on the part of representatives, elected representatives, in light of the threatening nature of the national security state to them. That I was in doing the Iran-Contra thing. I know that the United States senator who brought onto the floor of the Senate a bill demanding the revelation of the operations of the off-the-shelf enterprise. And that night, 3 men showed up at his home and dragged his wife out of bed and put a gun in her mouth and threatened to kill her, and their whole family if he didn't get on the floor and withdraw his demand for the investigation, which he did. Okay, so what I'm saying is, in on a lesser level, Frank Church, who chaired the Church Committee investigating the CIA, his very next election, millions of dollars just mysteriously flowed into his campaign against him and unseated him after numerous victories by 60 and 70%. Then all of a sudden,
there's what they can do to you. There's what they can do to you, and then there's what they can do for you. And I'm sure they have both.
That's exactly
both implements fully available.
That is exactly so. That's the underlying reality that we have to deal with, and that, in a certain strange way, Reed, is what the nature is of the concern on the part of the ETs. Look what the nature of the system is that is presently operational, even in the best of the countries on our planet. In the United States, without any doubt, is in the best, some of the best of us. It's evolved at least democratic institutions to an extremely high level. Mm-hmm. But the reality is we've got to deal with the national security state. And the people that are elected in Congress are not courageous enough to do that yet. The people that are leading the charge on this thing with disclosure, you can see almost all of them are freshmen and sophomore members of Congress. They're part of this Freedom Caucus that, in a certain sense, don't know any better yet.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to know how far back this goes and how deep. And I do think how, at times it is important to expand and recenter on a larger kind of framing of the issue.
That's right.
We saw these technologies be recovered on the ground post World War II. They were reverse engineered. They were probably taken into various, national defense organizations, but also private equity company, private companies, private defense companies. Different countries, different adversaries had their own crash recovery programs. And where this all got started was non-human technology, potentially being either crashed or deposited or transacted. We don't know. Is this a Trojan form of technological introduction that's already distorted the central power systems of the major superpowers in ways that would not have happened? We don't know. What if NHI had never shown up? What would have happened? We don't know. But even looking in the world today, it's a competition between great powers. And what is it a competition over? Is it over agriculture? Is it over sea lane access? It's technology. It's semiconductors. It's AI, right? It's the big tech arms race. And now we have indications of a arms race for non-human tech. And how has the presence of those technologies and the intentional introduction of them, I would imagine it's been semi-intentional. I can't imagine they were just that incompetent. They flew through our atmosphere. They hit a power cable. They had electromagnetic interference. They crashed. The end. That's the whole nature of everything that's happened with crash recoveries. I don't think so. So the introduction of these technologies has probably severely disturbed the organic development of the native society. I think back to North America and its interactions with colonial Europe. Bringing horses, gunpowder, disease, of course, and that totally disturbing. Alcohol as well, the native power structures, and so it doesn't have to do with a malevolence or an ill intent necessarily. It's two civilizations colliding. One is vastly more technologically superior. It may be operating in highly unethical ways, but ways in which match its own ethics. They're unethical to our value structure, but not to theirs. And so in this clash of civilizations, we're seeing a disturbance in our own human authorities and human systems of governance. And here you have it, this deep state national security complex. Next Tuesday, there's reportedly 3 witnesses, a former U.S. Air Force veteran who will discuss 5 UAP incidents, a Navy officer who witnessed UAP events firsthand, and a U.S. Air Force officer who the same. And I think there's a 4th witness being confirmed still.
Yeah, and the question is, why isn't Jay Stratton testifying? Jay Stratton, the head of the Advanced Weapons Special Access Program, Lou Elizondo's boss, who in fact has been willing in certain settings to admit that he's been directly in the physical presence, of a confirmed non-human origin extraterrestrial spacecraft and the non-human beings that were in it. He's admitted it on the Age of Disclosure video. He's said it.
Has he stated his willingness? Has he stated his willingness to testify?
Who cares whether he's willing? If Congress has the issue a subpoena for the guy, issue a subpoena.
I love that. I'm sure everyone's rooting their chairs.
Yeah, put him in front of the committee. And the problem is that the people who demand on issuing the subpoena, if they were to get the subpoena issued, could disappear tomorrow night. Thinking somebody shot him down in a dumb robbery effort or something. That the national security state mechanism that we have operating in the country at the present time is so thoroughly untrustworthy that they are intimidating the members of Congress. And the Congress is basically in a shadow play, like in the Plato's cave. There's a shadow play going on the wall, but the real activity is going on outside of the cave. And what we've got to do is those of us who are familiar with this have got to figure out how to navigate this. We've got to try to take the advantage of whatever the positive opportunities are that we have to generate more disclosure. We have to try to do everything in our power to try to get as much information as we can from other sources. We have to do everything that we can do to empower the Congress, because the idea of our democracy, the idea of our representative democracy is a great idea. And it is our defense. If we're going to be able to strengthen the institutions by means of which our human family can exercise democratic agency over our own policies and our own lives, we've got to be able to do it in the face of this approach of an extraterrestrial civilization. We've got to be able to strengthen our institutions themselves. And this is an opportunity to do that,
Well, something catastrophic might be coming. And I think, if anything breaks the back, it may not be all of our best efforts as American citizens, what have you, but external events do have a way of uniting a population and causing some kind of sudden recognition. So, I know there's this discussion, controlled disclosure, catastrophic disclosure, the worst framing in language I can imagine. Would you like control or catastrophe? Take your pick, please. I'll take control. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Not the best choice of words.
Dish it up. And I've had give me more, please.
And I know we're big advocates. Both of us. Go ahead.
Yeah, we need to be extremely sophisticated in what we're doing here. And that we have to. People may criticize me. They say this guy will tell you exactly what he thinks. He'll actually share with people. The citizen what he actually thinks. He'll actually share secrets with the American public. Oh, what a horrible thing. All of that is a fear on the part of the members of the national security state, because when I was representing Dr. John Mack at Harvard, The people that convened the tribunal to chastise him and attack him, they were just desperate that we keep it secret that they were doing it.
Mhm.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I respected John's request to keep it confidential, and I was gathering witnesses to actually present to them, in private. And one of
Mhm.
them was so upset about what was happening, he contacted the media and told them about it, that it was going on. And then the roof fell in on them. It turned out to be a good thing. I didn't do it on purpose. I was simply
Yeah.
trying to gather the witnesses that we needed to have to present to them, trying to play the inside game, to share the information about the validity of this phenomenon. But the bottom line is something similar is going on right now. What
Right.
we have to do is we don't have to demonize our people in the national security state. This thing has been going on since after World War II. I mean, that these people, I'm older than a lot of these people that we're talking about. I
Yeah.
mean, they've been raised in that particular culture and they believe it, and they resort to the bottom line that you keep sharing is, well, this could be an extraterrestrial civilization with an intent that is contrary to our own ethical values, and we need to therefore be on guard. We need to gird our loins collectively as a human family to figure out how to preserve our own agency and our own independence. All of that's true, but you share that type of information with people from the national security state, and they go for their guns. They go for
Mhm.
their guns and they start shooting down the UFOs to try to capture their technology so they can engage in a dialectical contest with them. That can't happen. We can't allow that to happen. But at the same
Mhm.
time, we can't just succumb to an extraterrestrial intelligence that's intentionally keeping itself secret from us, not sharing its information with us, not engaging in a kind of a more sophisticated program of attempting
Yeah.
to share information and helping to strengthen our own capacities to make independent judgments. None of that's going on right now. But the bottom
Yeah.
line is we have to do the very best that we can right now without making decisions that can have catastrophic long-term impact on our freedom and on our ability to govern ourselves on our planet.
Yeah. Well, take it as an olive leaf to the deep state right here, right now, and emergent that we acknowledge that you have been holding a set of realities that are high risk in your estimation, and that you have done your best, you think, to respond to in the best way possible for either your interest, Americans' interests, or the world interests. Tell us what you know about the phenomenon. What is the phenomenon? What has it done? What have you been dealing with? Yes. And, I mean, if that's part of the truth and reconciliation process ahead, it's not just what humans have done to humans, the crimes committed against humans. It's like, what has been happening between us and NHI? We don't know. We don't know how deep it goes, these mechanisms of possible psionic control, the abduction phenomenon, deals that have been made, deals that were violated, all has been spoken to in a testimonial fashion. And to air this thing out fully and to stay on the side of our own species, we're going to need to hear not just what humans have done, but what non-humans have done in this equation. If they've been operating.
See, there's a caveat in there that says if we're going to stay on the side of our human family, the point is that may not be the right side, and that's even more frightening.
That's a dramatic proposal to make, and I hear people do make it.
I know, and unless we have adequate information, our people aren't going to be able to make the decision in the right direction. In the national security state, people are trained into believing that we're not capable of making a decision like that we're not worthy of making a decision like that, because so few of us could pass a test on anything here. I mean, and the people pay so little attention to their responsibility as citizens, even in a democracy. All of that's true. But the fact is, each and every one of us have to bring to bear whatever it is that we have learned, in my 80 years, your 39 years. What
I feel young right now.
Right. Whatever any of us have come to know up to this point, it's time to put it on the table. It's time to put it on the table. We don't have time. There's something happening right now. There's decisions that are being made in the bowels of the national security state right now that are completely opaque to us. Okay.
Yeah.
But we can't be manipulated by them. We can't be duped by them. And on the other hand, we can't sell our human family short by being suckers to an extraterrestrial civilization that's playing a con game on us.
Right.
All of those things are potentials going on here. So we have to be extraordinarily sage and intelligent and responsible in the decisions that we're making. And we have to, in my opinion, we have to try to empower Congress, the institution that we've set up to have elected representatives, and to have elected representatives who are genuine and responsible, and might I point out, courageous, who dare.
And we have a few. It appears we have a few.
That's right.
Right.
We do. They need to take on the national security state here in this setting and demand to know what this information is, and to exercise their constitutional power to do it. To issue those subpoenas, to get them in there, take the depositions in the back rooms if they have to find out what it is that they're willing to say, and get the documents just like any other court case. We have demonstrated in the past that we've been able to force the national security state to do things that they didn't want to do, and we've kept them from doing some things that they did want to do, and we have to be able to do that again in this particular setting.
I'd also add, there's not just one national security state. China, Russia, the BRICS, they most certainly are involved. And so this is the added complexity. And in my mind, the policy going forward is not just one of attack your government, demand, to dry out the dirty laundry and hang the criminal. There can't be a mad mob mentality in UFO disclosure. There's got to be something much more sophisticated and principled, in fact. Principled. And that there are principles we're upholding that allows all parties to come to the table, even those who have committed crimes. And there is talk of truth and reconciliation, of pardons being issued for those who have violated everything from their own NDAs, right? Or who have followed their NDAs toward, committing crimes against other citizens. So to build that table of the future, that true round table where people come to the table, I think we need some kind of framework for articulating our human identity, our distinctness in the universe, because at any point, an NHI could come claiming to be us, to have fathered us, to have created us. So claims could be made, psychological operations could be undertaken, human or non-human. So human identity, our species identity, our species values, and some articulation of what sovereignty would look like at an international level, so that we can begin to have the basic capability set of defending air and sea, and the personal, close, intimate space of citizens, which is just a basic requirement that government be able to fulfill. I don't think they can fulfill it. That might be part of their crisis, is they do not have parity with this presence, right? And they cannot disclose for that reason, because it would explode the citizen government compact that keeps everything operating and stable. So what better way than to get citizens on board on their own footing? And before we talk about that, because I want to end on this discussion of citizen disclosure, citizen activism in the context of disclosure.
Exactly.
Yes, but your initiative for sure, and then other initiatives that are taking shape. But what can we expect out of Congress in the next year or two, in your estimation? What are you seeing and hearing that might move the ball?
I think that what we saw last time is in 2023 we saw the 64 pages passed by the Senate, came over to the House side, and we got 23 of the 64 pages. Okay, so it's sort of like a third of it. My sense is we may get another third this time.
Okay.
The Senate is pitching it back again, all 64 pages. It's gone over to the House side, and they're all trying to figure out now, without levels of sophistication, without knowledge of the facts, really. They're trying to decide how much more they can put in and get away with. Basically, how much more the elements of the national security state want to have put into the bill, And so my sense is we won't get they won't give up the subpoena process. They won't let Congress assert their subpoena power, because that means if they start digging in to the actual people who know about this, they know enough to know who they are. We know we can figure out who they are, and we can subpoena them. And then they'll go to the Supreme Court, all the way to the Supreme Court, to fight back against the subpoenas and all of that. So there's a protracted process that would happen even if Congress got up on its hind feet and fought them. to get this information. I don't anticipate that. I think there's going to be some kind of a compromise. We'll get maybe another third. If the main thing is if we can get the process started for nominating the 9 people to the panel. If we can get the panel that is by the statute authorized, actually directed to formulate a UAP controlled disclosure campaign plan, then you'll see it. Then there's the plan. There's the rollout that they're trying to figure out how to do and how much they're willing to show. The term that they use is kind of bizarre. Well, I won't even say it. But the bottom line is that
now everyone needs to know, Danny. Can't do that. What's the term?
They keep referring to it as the open kimono. Hey, we're going to have the whole open, go with the whole open kimono. It's a little grim, kind of the image of it. But they don't want to do that. So the question is, how much are they willing to do? How much is the Congress willing to pass? The House is the key here. If the House will pass the portion that sets up the panel, that directs the nominating process, it's set up now that the Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader of the House and the Minority Leader of the House and the Majority Leader and the Minority Leader of the Senate, the Secretary of Defense, there are other people. They put into the bill. An authorization of a citizens group to basically help nominate, and it's called the UAP Disclosure Foundation. We own the New Paradigm Institute and the Romero Institute own that domain. We have the domain of the UAP Disclosure Foundation. But the fact of the matter is, it was a name picked out of the sky and put into the statute to represent whatever the Citizens Coalition was that could be put together to actually put forth a set of nominees. The problem is that the national security state participants that drafted the statute are trying to get control of whatever those nominees are. And they want them all to be primarily in favor of the national security state interests. and that's
even in terms of this. Even in terms of this foundation, the citizen-led group.
They're trying to coerce the citizens group to become part of their agenda. Instead of having a real disclosure, but to have it be this controlled disclosure that they're willing to design and to authorize. And what's happening is we're pushing back. The New Paradigm Institute and the Citizens for Disclosure are pushing back, saying we want this to be a genuine citizen set of nominations, of having a panel that's genuinely interested in the public interest. It's not that they're devoid of any concern about the national security state, but it can't be controlled by the interests of the national security state, because all that is another blue book project. Here we'll let you. It's an obfuscation. It's conning the people again. It's football one more time. And that we're struggling hard to make that not happen by empowering the citizens through the Citizens Disclosure movement, the Citizens for Disclosure, the New Paradigm Institute. We're working in alliance to the best that we can achieve it with the UAP Disclosure Fund, that is basically being supervised now by Chris Mellon. It was started by Lou Elizondo, but Lou Elizondo was basically pushed out of it. Carl Nell was pushed out of it. And there's this kind of low consciousness kind of element going on inside, trying to establish this alliance. We're wanting to have the alliance, but we don't want the alliance to be dominated by the national security state people.
Right.
And they don't want it to be dominated by the citizens who they don't believe to be competent to have a full open kimono kind of disclosure, because they view that as potentially catastrophic. So the dynamic that's really going on is behind the scenes, which shouldn't surprise anybody, of trying to figure out what the nominations are going to be to that board, that panel. But as I say, the statute itself authorizes Trump to completely ignore whatever the nominations are. He could pick his sons and put them on there, his sons and daughters. or put himself on there, just like he put himself in charge of the Kennedy Center. That
Right.
I'll have
What do you make of Trump and his sons and close inner circle apparently being quite up to speed on this issue and not only interested but intentful to be transparent?
they're trying to figure out what's in it for them. I don't think anybody who knows anything about them has any suspicion otherwise. They're trying to figure out what's in it for them in the long run. How can he maintain power? He's in the process right now of trying to figure out who he can have as a fake stalking horse to run for the presidency, for the nomination for the Republican Party, and have him run for the vice presidency. That's what Trump is doing right now, trying to figure out how he can stay really in charge, just like Dick Cheney was in charge in the W. Bush administration, just like George Bush Sr. was in charge in the Reagan administration, running everything from the vice presidential office. That's the kind of thing that's going on behind the scenes here. And
we are where we are because of both Republican and Democratic administrations.
That's right.
Welcome to 2025, everyone. It's been an 80-year journey.
Yeah.
So take all presidencies into account. I mean, it's hard to imagine the calculus in terms of one's own party, the interest that got you elected, all your other agenda items. Of course, every year of an administration is different, right? So like you can't be doing in the last year, the fourth year of an administration, what you might do in the second.
That's right.
And so there's a lot of interest involved. And what is the calculus by which disclosing this to the public, the global public, benefits one's interests?
That's right.
Especially if one does not share a sense of a human interest, but rather maybe at best a national interest, or at worst a personal branding interest, right? And so it's fraught. It's fraught.
But we know that
any opening that gets made in the societal space there's going to be, the vultures will descend, right? There'll be an attempt to shut it down, to redirect it, repurpose it. So that's to be expected.
That's right.
I think, this narrative about controlled disclosure, in my sense, I understand the rationale, but it does seem too late to me. It has festered. It's gotten too bad and too ugly. And if it doesn't come out in a more sudden fashion, I would be worried that it would come out in a controlled fashion, which is to say a very inaccurate or incomplete fashion. So, those who have been proponents of controlled disclosure might need to rethink that position, right? This is shifting and moving, NHI included, right? So on the societal space, then, what should we be, in your opinion, doing? What is the key actions for civilians, for advocates and activists out there?
I think that the Citizens for Disclosure need to be demanding that Congress, as a first step, pass this bill, okay, and get the process started so that the struggle can go on to figure out who's going to be nominated for this panel, and have that be as public as possible, so that at least Trump will be confronted by a series of nominees some of whom are very much weighted in the direction of the public interest. They'll know that some of them are weighted in behalf of the national security state, and then that we have to try to corner Trump, to try to limit to the degree to which anybody's able to control him, so that he doesn't just appoint some hand-picked toadies, that'll do whatever it is he wants. That next step is to control the process of the selection of the 9-person panel that is going to be creating the controlled disclosure campaign plan, which will entail how much is going to get exposed, how rapidly it's going to get exposed, how thoroughly is it going to expose things. That's where the play is right now, and there's no way to avoid that. The way it's been framed, I don't think that they've got adequate control of the national security state. People have adequate control over that right now, so as to be able to have it do what it is they originally intended, to be able to have it be a complete, minimal leakage, to try to deal with whatever their interests are. That hopefully we can get control of it, but we have to mobilize the American citizens right now. The American citizens have the best chance of doing something.
What would mobilize them? I mean, I have so many UFO conversations. They all go more or less very well. People are very interested to know, but what would impel the citizenry to actually be a vocal, demanding voice in society, such that the authorities would respond, or maybe even have to respond to it?
Well, I think that they really have to come to grips with they have to come to grips with the more profound problem of the national security state. That it has to be a part of the discussion that's going on
Mhm.
now about disclosure. The disclosure has to be about a lot more than just what do they know about the UFO issue. We've got to have
Mhm.
disclosure about what the national security state has been doing, and the intimidation that they're exercising of members of Congress, to the point of threatening physical violence against them. If they get out of line. We've got to be
Yeah.
able to get control of the national security state people and push them back. And then that means we have to engage in communications with Russia and China to get them to step back as well. You can't just do
When you
this
say step back, what is stepping back?
that they need to join in an alliance, a treaty. First of all, they need to have a treaty where the United States and Russia and China all agree not to try to use any of the ET technology for weapons programs. It's got to be
Hmm.
like a brand new nuclear compact. Not
Right.
to
A,
not to
non,
use.
a, non, a non-human intelligence technology non-proliferation treaty.
That's exactly
And
right.
right, and it's not just weapons of mass destruction. I mean, it is going back to machine learning, artificial
That's
intelligence,
right.
big data,
That,
surveillance
that's
technologies.
right. All
I
that.
mean, even I know people would roll their eyes when I say it, but the development of psionic assets and their utilization against citizens
Yeah,
of one's own country.
absolutely. No, you needn't roll
So
your eyes.
how
That's
have these
that's that's
technologies, how
true.
have tech and capabilities of non-human origin been deployed in ways that
That's right.
might profit? They might advance some small subset of one industry, but
Yep.
they may ultimately devour another
That's right.
industry or
That's right.
undermine the foundations of society. Look at
Yeah.
social media. I mean, Australia is implementing a social media ban for 16 year and under, which is
Yeah.
first of its kind in the world. Everyone's watching it, but it's like these technologies, if unrestrained, can under erode the foundations of
Absolutely.
society.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And and if in fact they're extraterrestrial in origin, if it's been seeded into our culture by kind of dropping a technology in, that Corso was very clear. Philip Corso was very clear that one of the technologies that was recovered at Roswell was the silicon chip.
Mhm. Yeah, I remember his comments
That's what
about
he
it.
says. You know,
As well as basically being the government cowed into cooperating with the program of the Greys in
yes,
exchange for access to the population, uh, complicity, not only complicity, but collaboration, forced collaboration in a sense that you've got to be there to make sure we don't hurt them, which means you got to be there.
right.
It's uncomfortable to be a present at your citizen's own abduction. I know, and those comments, some of them have come under question and under doubt. But there are indications that these technologies have been not just recovered
Yeah,
from crashed vehicles, but
salted.
actually
And
transacted
yeah,
for.
salted
And
into the culture.
yes,
And
right.
so that look at the fact of the matter is we have to have the most sophisticated and transparent possible conversation about all of this, and it could take place in the context of a panel that is designed to solicit and extract and get into their possession every single piece of information that has been gathered by our government since January 1st of 1945, and get it
Right.
into their hands and have the proper people assigned to that panel, nominated to begin with,
Mhm.
and then to have those nominees have some sort of impact in the culture and have impact on Trump as to who he appoints. So he can't just run off and appoint some completely different group of people that are completely self-serving for him.
Yeah.
These are all this is the dynamic that is going on. This is a game of chess that we're engaged in here. And,
Yeah.
and we need,
100%. And I think we need big thinkers. We need nuanced thinkers. We need citizen activists. We need human activists, actually. And, the policy that we might put forward as citizen advocates and activists might be one that is dramatic. Like you just said, Danny, a moratorium on the development of non-human technologies for the purpose of weaponization.
yes,
Of course, now weaponization is data is
yeah, different
weaponization, right?
different forms of
Social media is
weaponization.
weaponization. There's so
That's
many
right.
weapons that are just digital. I mean, this
Yep,
this this is a
that's right.
weapon right here, a weapon of mass
That's
distraction,
right.
as it's been
Hmm.
called. So if you're using these tech to distract and to
Yep.
delude and misinform your own population, that's a
Yep.
weapon. But even a policy where it may not be practical or practicable to discern the intent of this collection of non-human entities that are in the
That's right.
world. Who's really who's flying the true flag, who's flying a false flag.
Yep.
The opportunity for deception is epic, and our
Yep.
proclivity to just believe is also quite significant. So a policy may be a forced removal from the Earth planetary system of non-human intelligence for a temporary period until such time as we can develop a diplomatic context for engagement.
Yes.
That's a level of policy that I don't think many people are thinking about.
Right.
It's not just about how do we put laws and regulations and IP controls on whatever tech gets leaked out or squeaked out of the national security state. That's thinking small ball disclosure.
Small ball.
That's not big ball disclosure.
No, that's right. And that's part of the problem with Congress is that all they want to do is do small ball. In the government institutions. I get calls from FBI people and they say, "Oh, we're very interested. The FBI is very interested in undertaking investigation in this area." And I say, "Oh, that's great." And they say, "Do you have any names of specific people who may have threatened a particular whistleblower so that we can investigate them?" I said, "Wait a second. Talk about small ball. We're talking about a legacy program that's been lying to the people for 80 years. Somebody's got to do something about that." And immediately, that's way above their pay grade. They're not interested in doing that at all. What they're really interested in is finding out who your sources are. Who are your whistleblowers who are being threatened, so that they can investigate them as well. Because they can't think beyond a very, very narrow field of jurisdiction that they have. So that we have to have very large thinkers in this panel that we're talking about, 9-person panel, and they can't be all from the national security state, and they can't be all from ACLU. Let's what are we doing? Okay. I'm getting more messages here coming across my transom here. I've got other things I have to do. But look at that's where the play is here. That what we have to hope for is that we can get the House of Representatives to put in at least the panel, to have this panel. They've already put in the order to make the agencies turn over the information to the National Archives. I don't have the slightest suspicion they're going to do it voluntarily.
Right.
They also have to have the subpoena power, and they have to have the power of contempt to order to subpoena the heads of those agencies that are in defiance of Congress, drag them in front of Congress, threaten them with contempt of Congress if they don't turn that stuff over. And then they're going to go and they're going to appeal to the court and try to get it to the Supreme Court to try to declare that the national security state is superior and in charge of everything, and Congress can go pound. That's what they're after. They're trying to do that. But we've got to have the showdown with these people right now. And this is the right place to do it because more people are interested in the UFO issue than almost any other thing. And it cuts across all political lines. The right wing, left wing, middle wing, everybody want to know about this. Okay.
Yeah.
And the only people that are fighting it are the aerospace corporations and the national security state people. And so we isolate them and have an insurrection, basically, from the citizens to demand this. And they've got to demand to have the subpoena power put into Congress, and they've got to demand to get the panel put into position, and the panel has to have subpoena power. The panel has to have subpoena power to investigate, to find out what's really going on and what information is still being withheld, who's got it, and then what are we going to do about that, and put it into the controlled disclosure campaign plan, and have that be transparent so people can see what they're proposing, and have the people rise up and say that's not good enough. You're not going to get adequate disclosure with what you're saying. You're part of the cover up, and apply citizen pressure. But the bottom line is our citizens, we have to mobilize. We have to mobilize and learn about what these realities are. Learn, put your big boy pants on, your grown-up pants, and face the way the world really is here, and come to grips with the national security state. Because we're in the process of having to set forth the protocols that are going to control our relationship with this extraterrestrial civilization for the next 10,000 years. And we're getting ready to put those protocols in place in the next 5 to 10 years here.
Mhm.
Okay.
Right. Right. I hope we have another 10,000 years. Current trajectory is in the hundreds, I would
Yeah.
say.
Yeah.
But
We have
you
to
know,
stretch that out. We have to
we've
expand
got a
that.
lot of problems. Yeah. Well, Danny, it's been a pleasure, and I know you have to run. I would love to do a part 2 on
Sure.
all of what citizen activism and advocacy can look like, because you know, I had the sense of just listening to this review board and its subpoena power is like there's a problem of relying on powerful factions to air out each other's laundry,
Yeah,
right?
that's exactly
We
right.
just tend to not let each other do that,
That's
and it
right.
becomes this thuggery fight in the back alleys. It's ugly, and then
That's right.
but society needs to step forward. And maybe some final thoughts and or some more information about your Citizens for Disclosure movement. But how can people out on the street level of life who are becoming aware of this, realizing, holy crap, there's UAP in the skies, and there's a potential non-human intelligence in the world. What actions can they take?
They should contact the newparadigminstitute.org. It's very simple, newparadigminstitute.org, and sign up to be one of the Citizens for Disclosure, because that way we're sending you newsletters a couple times a week, giving you all the latest information on what's happening. There's all background information that you can dig into. There's entire virtual courses that you can take to familiarize yourself with what is known. And you can, the more you know, the more excited you're going to get about this, and to become more and more engaged. You got to be as excited about this as you are about whether or not your local college football team is going to win on Saturday. I mean,
Right.
we've got to raise.
Oh, it's got to go higher. It's got to go to the NFL level. It's got to be more important than
the Super Bowl.
Who wins the Super Bowl?
Yeah, this is you got to be Super Bowl interested in this, because this is the Super Bowl. This is the Super Bowl, the showdown.
This is the Super Bowl of life.
Yeah, that's right. Not only between the citizens and the national security state, but between the human species and an extraterrestrial civilization. This is the Super Bowl. And it can be a friendly game. It can be a game played according to the rules. It can be extraordinarily exciting, very entertaining, and illuminating. But we have to participate. We have to participate. Right. Otherwise, it's going to be going on in the shadows, and we're going to be continued to be treated like mushrooms, kept in the dark and fed crap,
Well, folks, thank you, Danny, so much for joining. Thank you for your tenacity and your ever push. You've been in the fight a long time, and thank you for all the ways you've advanced it. So, folks, head over to newparadigminstitute.org, check out Citizens for Disclosure, and as we begin to realize our own place as citizens of humanity, really interfacing with a new ecosystem of life potentially beyond our world, and who other than ourselves should be the actors on that stage? We are the human beings being discovered. So
absolutely.
With that, thank you, Danny. I hope to do a part 2 with you. We can go deeper into this kind of advocacy activism
absolutely
angle.
I'll see you on the other side of the September 9th hearings.
Sounds good. We crossing our fingers, but not leaning on too many expectations. Well, thank you, folks, for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. An important conversation as we trudge into the unknowns of the phenomenon, engage in the responsible speculation that we need to be engaging in to inspect what this phenomenon is, to examine and investigate its foundations, its activities, and how it has woven itself into our human world. I think this is due course for us as concerned citizens, not just of one country, but as a member of the human species. So thank you for being here on Emergent. I look forward to a number of great interviews, new guests coming on the show in the next few weeks. If you haven't headed over to Forerunner to check out my course on decoding the intent of NHI, I please encourage you to do so. That would be great. I've got a few hundred people who have already taken the course, I think up to about 300 now. And so look forward to more people doing that and beginning to understand for themselves what this phenomenon is and what its fundamental activity has been. And with that, I'd also like to say I have a Patreon that I just opened up. If you'd like to support Emergent, Forerunner, myself, all these efforts, I invite you to be a supporter of Emergent there on Patreon. I'm actually enjoying a great deal having a new outlet to share some personal thoughts and notes with you out there I don't typically do that on X because it's a contested space. And I don't do that on other platforms because there's better things to be doing there, I guess. But it's great to have a personal line to you all on Patreon. So you can head over to Patreon and be a supporter of the show. And with that, I will say good night, good luck, and keep endeavoring on these front lines of the phenomenon. Take care, everyone.